my biggest growth has happened when I didn't know what was around the corner.
Hello there, it's me, Steve Mellor, and welcome in to Growth Ready, the podcast that allows high performers to reveal the reality behind what it means to ready yourself for growth, the personal and professional challenges along the growth journey, while also allowing the high performance executive coach in me to satisfy his curiosity toward what drives optimal performance. On this episode, we welcome in the Director of Community Affairs and Corporate Communication with Carter's, Maritza McClendon. And as a former world-class athlete, Maritza understands the importance of putting yourself at the center of communities and experiences that will provide the possibilities to prove just how ready you are for the growth and success you know you can achieve. Hey guys, as we get started here with the episode, I want to just take 1 minute of your time to make a request for you to subscribe and rate the show. For our show to be easily discovered by other potential listeners, we need our current listeners, that's you, to take the time to not only subscribe, but to also rate the show. Whether you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, whatever platform of choice, there are typically ways to be rating the show. So go ahead and click something like that 5th star and be sure to take that additional time to leave a comment or two about why it is you enjoyed listening to the Growth Ready podcast. Your efforts on this will allow our show to be more discoverable, which means we're going to find more listeners and continue to have that significant impact on the community of human performance and personal development that I know you are all benefiting from by being listeners to this show. Please go ahead, take the time, subscribe, rate the show today. Hey, and while you're at it, why don't you share it with a few people as well? I appreciate you guys. Let's get to the interview. Hello there, and welcome back into the most recent installment of the Growth Ready podcast. I am so excited to be having a returning guest from our formerly titled Career Competitor podcast, now turned Growth Ready podcast, to have Maritza McClendon joining us today. And while I know your story and some of our listeners already know your story because of the last time that you came on, the question I did not ask you last time, because it's a new question that I'm asking everybody that I cannot wait to hear your answer to, is Maritza, what does it mean to you to be growth ready?
Oh, Steve, you always throw out those good questions for us. I think for me, to be growth ready means to be open to the possibilities that lie ahead, and knowing that the things that I have done in getting ready for the Olympics, getting a new job, raising a family, being married, all that stuff has helped me prepared for the moment that I'm at, to be able to help me realize that I can have success in any area that I put my mind to it. So not to say that the future is going to be full of the same possibilities. My goal is that there's new possibilities and that I'm ready for it, and walking in with an open mind, but still having that like grit and determination to attack whatever comes my way.
I love it. And mainly because something I'm hearing straight away is so much of your story highlights so many different transitions, so many different chapters, so many different roles even that you're playing right now, never mind over the course of your life. And I think the first thing that you say there around this notion of we can just be open to the possibility. When you say something like possibility, I guess, how do you get comfortable with the idea of possibility? Because with possibility comes uncertainty and unknowns and all this kind of thing. And so I'm curious for you, when you think about your relationship and your perspective towards that word possibility, how might you explain to someone listening who just goes, oh my gosh, don't give me possibilities, because that means I'm looking at a whole bunch of unknowns and I can't get comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think possibility is different for everybody. For me, getting prepared for what could possibly lie ahead is walking in with the confidence that I can really be prepared to navigate that space. And it's not to say that I know every single next step that's going to happen, but to know that I'm walking into, this is a good, Steve, you're throwing me for a loop here. I'm trying to explain possibility for people. And I get it. Like, for a lot of people, it is scary to just say like, well, I need to know what my next step is going to be.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that may hold somebody back because they're expecting something that they already know about.
Mm,
And I think for me, my biggest growth has happened when I didn't know what was around the corner. I may have a goal and I have like these milestones that I want to reach to get that big goal, but you're going to be thrown for a loop. I'll give you an example of when you're getting ready for a race and you get behind the block and suddenly your goggles pop off or they
right.
break. How, who would have thought that that would have happened? You know, like I've had that happen at a major meet and you're just like, I should be used to this stuff. Like I should know
Mm,
that my goggles need to stay on and they shouldn't break and I should have a new one or whatever it is. But in that moment, you just have to be prepared to pivot.
yeah.
And I think that's what, to me, that's what the possibility means. Like just being able to know that there is a possibility that you're going to be thrown for a loop along your path to your journey or for as you head for your goal, but to know that you have the tools in your toolbox, your toolkit that can help you overcome that challenge.
Yeah.
And just having that confidence too. I think
Hmm.
for me personally, I work really well in that unknown space, and I know it's not the thing for everybody. I
Sure.
totally get it.
Yeah.
But to me, that unknown space opens up a possibility that I never knew was there,
Yeah.
and I'm not afraid to kind of walk through that.
I I'm so glad that my question sent you through a loop because I think for me, I like asking these kind of questions to people that are just it's like I don't know, I just get it. I just get it. Like it just makes sense to me. And when we come
Mhm.
through sport the way we do, we you have no choice but to get comfortable in the
Mhm.
unknown. You cannot ever assume that things are going to be the way that you assume that they will be because the moment you assume is the moment your goggle snap is the moment that thing happens where it's just like this wasn't the plan, now what do I do?
Right.
But you have to have that part of your DNA, that muscle, and we get it we got it in practice for years, right? They're all coaches are thrown as like, okay, I know this wasn't on the practice, but now we're going to give you this to do, and it's like, come on, I'm already exhausted, why are you asking me to do more? But we've it's become so inherent in folks like you and I that I think to the I say I don't want to use average person, but non-athlete. Let's just say non-athlete out there.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a hard time relating to that. But here you are saying that, hey, I'm just going to sit in life knowing that it's filled with possibilities, therefore unknowns.
Mhm.
And hey, to be honest, I wouldn't sign up for anything other than that. And I hear that level of comfort that you have with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can put a little perspective as like, for example, my career. I started my career in marketing
Mm,
and I am now in corporate communications and community affairs.
mm,
Had no idea I'd ever get to that space, but I really think the curiosity of that unknown space has gotten me to where I am.
mm,
So, meaning I was given a role and I got curious about what are other things? What's my network look like? How can I connect the dots with more people? And that has kind of shifted me into spaces where they're like, Maritza, you're really good at communications. So they put me in the communication space and I shared my passion around D&I. And then they kind of gave me some more of the D&I, diversity and inclusion space.
mhm.
And then, of course, now with my background with swimming and wanting to give back to the community, I think I was able to kind of listen in on what we're doing from a community side and say like, have we ever thought about this?
Mm.
And just kind of share my perspective. And that kind of opened up a new possibility to now lead our philanthropic work at Carter's, which is where I work.
Right.
And so I don't think that would have happened had I not been just walking in with a little bit of open mindedness and being curious about what could happen.
Yeah, so now you've just thrown in this whole like community dynamic to this thing too, which I love because now it's like, okay, here you are as someone that embraces the unknown, but what you're actually doing is taking what you're familiar with in that example you gave there with swimming and using it as a tool to expose others to what is unknown to them and the
Right.
power of that. And there's this knock-on effect that I'm now hearing for that. And so I'm curious, even just from building upon that, even as an idea for you personally, like when you think about the comfort level you have there as this sort of integral central piece in a community in wholesale communication throughout an organization, how does your comfort level with what may seem pretty chaotic in a space like that to many, how does your comfort level influence and impact those around you that maybe don't necessarily run towards that same situation the way in which you would?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say a lot of people tell me I'm the person who brings the calm into the space. It's interesting that you say, you're like, how do you kind of keep the cool? And honestly, that comes from the years of training and having
Mm,
to stand up behind the block and get ready to race, right? Like I have that calmness about me. Don't get me wrong, I can definitely get anxious and worried and all those things, but there comes a moment where you just kind of walk in and I just take a deep breath, just like I did before my races, and was like, okay, we can do this. Like, let's take a moment to say, what are the things that I know that can be done? What are the things that I know have been done? And what are some of the questions I may not be asking? Or what are some of those unknowns that I really need to get some more information? So it's really
mm,
about trying to figure out, how can you get yourself a little bit more comfortable in certain spaces? And if it's so many unknowns, try to make some more knowns, right?
mm,
Go ask some people some questions. Go ask them, like, well, did you guys try this in the past? Or did we engage marketing? Or did we engage, our leadership team? Or have you talked to a certain leader? Like, you can kind of pull in different questions and be very specific about it, right?
mm,
Just being able to understand, how can you start to paint a little bit of a picture or an outline, if you will, of what could possibly lie ahead. But I think it's really taking a moment to take a deep breath before you get moving. And when things throw you for a loop, do the same thing again.
mhm.
Just say, okay, we might have to pivot here. What do we know about this pivot? What do we don't know about? What do we not know about this pivot?
Yeah.
And try to start to just pull little pieces in to start to kind of give yourself a little bit more grace to understand what really is lying ahead, and then tap into what makes you so powerful in certain spaces. What ideas can you bring to the table to then influence those around you to get on board? Or
Mhm.
maybe it could be a teammate who always has great ideas in a certain area of expertise. Engage them with a conversation, because I think that's when you start to influence more people to be part of the conversation, which will then drive some pretty innovative results.
Yeah, I love that whether you meant to do it or not, you just kind of lined out a process in itself. Like you just kind of given it to us in that form of, if you are stepping into a space where the idea of unknowns really does unsettle you, is how can you use the power of community and relationship to somewhat settle you, even if you're not going to be totally settled, it settles you enough to then maybe just identify a single known. Like, what can you take from this blanket space of unknown and just be able to pinpoint, oh, wait, no, 1 second, there's something here. There's something here that I do have some familiarity with. I can actually say, no, I know that. I can actually relate to that, and I can see myself represented maybe in that, show that I have a comfort in that. And suddenly now we build that word confidence that you said before. Now I have a bit of confidence, and now we're starting to actually move through out of our own way to stepping into a space that typically maybe we would run away from. And I think that is so encouraging for our audience, because I think so often on this podcast, we have folks that come from backgrounds who speak with such comfort about certain notions that they bring to the show. And yet we can sometimes do a better job of being like, listen, just because it's comfortable to me doesn't mean I'm assuming that, hey, all humans should find this comfortable. But if you were to take a step towards comfort, this might be your first step that you take. And I'm just curious now to even go back over the years, when you think about you, the former elite athlete, Olympic athlete, performing at the height of the sport of swimming, for you to step into some of those arenas at times when you felt as though you weren't necessarily ready to go the way in which you wanted to go, how did you step into just one sense of maybe greater comfort? I want to kind of take that really high pressure, high stakes environment that you used to be in and say, how did Maritza, in those moments where she felt as though, hey, maybe I don't have my A game today, or maybe I don't feel as though preparations were ideal going into this, that every elite athlete experiences that at some point. What might have been a step that you could have taken back then as an athlete that could maybe serve us even today in our typical day in terms of just finding that element of comfort, stepping into something that maybe isn't as comfortable as you wanted it to be?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, there's definitely been multiple moments that I walk in and I'm like, whew, the nerves kick in. You get the butterflies in your stomach, you start sweating, you can't stop fidgeting. And I think for me, it took some trial and error,
Mm,
right? So I share this when I do my speeches with kids, or even adults, take time to try different things. So, you hear maybe Michael Phelps. He puts on his headphones and he's got his playlist going that kind of gets him into the zone. You hear about other athletes who have to go stand in the corner and stretch out their arms and swing their arms and get some blood flowing. For me, I tried all those things, right? And what I found that worked best for me was to get into start to turn off everything else that was around me and get into my zone, right? Because for me, I was always like, where's my mom? Where's my teammates? Oh, look at that crack on the floor. Like they need to fix it, or there's a big puddle of water. Like I was like a squirrel. Little
Right.
things that were catching me off guard.
Yeah.
And that added to my nervousness, right? Like, so I would get up there and I would just be so distracted and not focused on my race. And so what I did before my races was I would get up, I would put my goggles on, I would stretch out my arms, and I would bend over and tell myself to do my best. Because for me, that was a way for my mindset to say, no matter the outcome, you gave it your all. So not only did that allow me to get into the zone, but also to say, if I didn't have a best time, it's okay. What I need to do now is learn from what happened and try to make improvements along the way. But I had to be okay when, I might not have shown up at my best, or I might not have done, the race that I thought I had built in my mind. I was like, no, I can do this. And I'm literally trying to convince myself to do this race. But it's really a moment to say, like, how can you turn off the noise that's distracting you? And for me, it was to bend over, touch my toes, got myself in the zone, told myself to do my best, and then whatever the outcome was, if it was great, celebrate it. If it wasn't so great, celebrate the opportunity that you can look back and say, like, what can I do different next time? And that was kind of the mindset that I took going forward. And I think that is really kind of where you see those elite athletes pop up and kind of reach higher levels, because they're able to kind of overcome those moments. And just know everybody gets nervous. If
Yep.
somebody tells you they're like, I never get nervous, they're
Yep.
lying.
Yeah. No,
But
and I love that you even took it to nervousness, because again, I just sort of framed it more as like, hey, just it's a situation you don't feel as prepared as you wanted to, etc. But then you immediately put it in towards this nervous energy, and that's how you related to it. And I think that immediately is so much more relatable for anyone listening, is wherever you are on your growth journey, whether it be career wise, personally wise, whatever, like there's going to be something that gets you nervous. There's going to be something that makes you feel a little less than confident than you would want to feel going into whatever it is. The question becomes is, what do you want to do in those moments? Do you want to shy away? Do you want to step into it? We're talking about stepping into it. That's what the audience of this podcast is about. They don't come on this show to hear how to get out of those moments. They come onto this show to listen how to get into those moments. And so for you to simplify it and say, could it be as simple as a sentence, just a message that we give to ourselves in a moment to say, listen, just do my best. Just do my best. And by telling myself that, I know what that means. Subjectively, I know what that means. And that's enough. That's enough. It doesn't need to mean anything else to anyone else. It just needs to mean what it means to me. And as you put it there, when you get on the other side of that performance, you can take that time then to assess it and analyze it and tell yourself what could have been better and all this kind of stuff. But to actually meet the nervous energy with a mission statement almost to yourself and say, hey, listen, Maritza, we've arrived now. We're in this point. Now you just do your best. And after that, we will live with the results. But for now, it's that simple, right?
Right. And definitely consider getting feedback too, right? When you get into a situation where it's kind of unknown, and you do whatever comes to you and whatever happens, take a moment to talk to your leader and say, do you have any feedback for me? They always say feedback's a gift, but be on the other side and be open-minded to get that feedback and do something about it. Do something with that feedback too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm actually glad that you brought up feedback, because in my world today, most of the companies I work with, the clients that I work with, one of the first things they mention to me is how uncomfortable people are in this space of feedback. And again, we get to come from the same world in this conversation and go like, all I knew was feedback. That's literally the way, if you could define practice, if there was certain words that you would use, feedback would be up there with one of the top 5 words that you would sort of summarize the experience. And so again, it's an innate part of who we are. But you use that term leader there. Like, again, you can go to a leader to find that feedback. I'm curious now, just from your own growth journey, You know, we spoke 3 years ago, so you're another 3 years into the work you're doing there at Carter's. I assume there's more and more leadership responsibilities that come with the work you do. How have you, as a leader now, grown in your ability to be the one giving the feedback? I'm just really curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, I think, and you're right. It's sometimes it can be an uncomfortable conversation, but I think again, as a leader, you're setting the tone, you're setting the mood. Have it be a conversation, right?
Mm,
Have it be a discussion where you're asking for a dialogue. You're having a two-way conversation, and it's not just to say you didn't do a great job. It's really asking what do you. For me, I walk into my reviews, especially with my direct reports, to say, all right, let's talk about the year. What do you think went well?
mhm,
Let's start with the positive stuff. And usually when my team members start to go through like what worked well, they'll start to be like, well, I guess I could have done better here. And it's like, well, let's talk about it.
yeah.
Let's see what are some of those areas, and just really kind of tackling the conversations where you're not going in simply to attack the bad, but you're really kind of pulling in what did they do good, maybe where are some opportunities, and how can we kind of layer in how the good stuff can influence the opportunities to
Mm,
make yourselves better. So for me, I just want to make sure that we're always walking in and setting the mood to have that conversation, and it's not them feeling deflated or on threat mode or anything like that. Like, it's really just coming in to have a conversation. And sometimes people do get defensive, and if that is the case, maybe it's time to take a break. Give that
yeah.
person an opportunity to just kind of walk away, calm down a little bit. Just like anybody walking into an unknown space where they get nervous, you might need a
Yep.
minute. Take a
Yeah.
breather.
Yep.
And that happens with when you're talking to some people. They get so flustered. As a leader, take a moment to recognize that and say, hey, I understand. This may be a little bit more challenging, and maybe a little bit, hopefully it's not unexpected, but maybe it could be. How about we take a minute?
Mm,
Let's come back a little bit later and really think about some of the things that you've done really well, and really apply some of those things for opportunities that we've already discussed, and let's have another conversation. So
yeah.
I think sometimes that break is helpful.
Yeah. I mean, you've just if that's what you're preaching there at Carter's in terms of how you're doing feedback, then Carter's is doing feedback at an elite level. Let's put it that way. And I'm serious, because I think when you initially make that point of, hey, make sure you have people in your world that give you feedback, based on the circles that I run in today, the word feedback is a negative connotation straight away. People run towards the negative. And so for you to say, hey, have people in your world that are willing to give you feedback, people are going to initially hear that more often than not as, find people in my world to tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I'm so glad that you presented it the way you did, because it's like, well, actually, feedback is a collaborative experience first and foremost. It's not driven by the person providing the feedback. It is something you share the experience with. And for you then to say to a direct report, tell me what you've done well. Tell me how things are going. And it's no different to that world of sport that we've come from, is that when I was working with athletes, if it didn't go well, all they wanted to do was come and complain about how it didn't go well. And this is the second point I wanted to get to now that you made, is I would, every time they would come to me in that headspace, I'd say, go warm down, go think. This is not the time to be remotely critical and or constructive, because you're not in the right headspace to hear it. Go do your thing for 20, 30 minutes. And then when you're ready to have the conversation in a more effective way, then we'll go ahead and have it then. And I think that is lacking in the corporate space to such an extent, even in the personal world, because again, we set a 30-minute window to do something. And if we don't utilize that 30 minutes, it's like, okay, we didn't get to it, so let's move. But what you're saying is that maybe that 30 minutes isn't the right time, and that you should excuse an individual from that experience and ask them, hey, when you're ready, let's come back to this and let's make this a more worthwhile experience for you.
Yeah, agreed. And I think too, people are more open to sharing that, being real, right?
Mm-hmm.
And saying you recognize that you're human, right? And you may be flustered. It's okay, and saying it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of immediately sends a really good signal to people. I also do think from the person that's receiving that feedback, um, challenge yourself to not walk into a conversation thinking it's going to be negative, because you're right, a lot of people hear that word feedback and they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to pick apart all these
Mm-hmm.
things that I'm doing wrong. When the reality is, hopefully, people are walking in to say, you're doing really great here, but I think you can be even better. And here are some of your opportunities on how you can do that. And I always end my conversation saying, how can I help?
Mm-hmm.
Because as a leader, we definitely want our direct reports to take ownership of their development, but we also want to be part of that development. And it's really not saying like, okay, well, if you want to speak up more in meetings, I'll be sure to call on you. Talk about what that looks like. Talk about
Yeah.
what helping your direct report speak up in a meeting looks like, because I think it looks different for a lot of people. Like for some people, if you call on them in the middle of a meeting and say there's a CEO in the room,
Mm-hmm.
they may freeze.
Yep.
That's not the right approach to take for someone who wants to speak up. It might be maybe working your way up there. It may be, hey, I know, before you walk into a meeting, give them a pep talk.
Mm-hmm.
You're a subject matter expert in this. Make sure you talk about, you can go through your list of things, or, talk about what that could look like for someone and how you can best support them.
Mm. Gosh, it's such good stuff, and I think for for everyone listening now, you have an opportunity to decide based on what you're sharing with us, Maritza. It's like if you don't have a consistent feedback system that is allowing you to feel more empowered and take greater ownership in your own journey, now might be a great time to reassess the feedback system that you're using, whether that be with your respective leader in your life in some capacity. But there's an opportunity for you to make that decision and just say, hey, what is it that I need to have around me so that I'm actually walking away from a moment of feedback feeling better off for receiving the feedback. And that is what I'm hearing, is that it's not just as simple as getting the feedback. It's about the mood and the mindset that you have having received the feedback. And I don't know, I love it. And I think you said something there that I also want to just acknowledge is not as typical as you maybe made it sound, but you sort of said there that as leaders, we want to help. Just to be clear, that's not a blanket statement. Some leaders want to help. And I think that is key in leadership, is that if you have people that you consider to be leaders in your world and they're showing a willingness to help, they're probably the people to be gravitating towards when it comes to then soliciting feedback from them as well.
Agreed. Well said. Love it. Yes.
So I want to now talk about what's next for you and growth moving forwards, because for me, like, that is something I've been much more consistent with in the last few months with folks that come on the show, especially those that are returning to the show, is that while we were around the years so much when you first came on, we've not done that so much this time, and we're focusing a little bit more on what is currently happening, and now I want to focus a little bit more on what lies ahead. So when you think about these tools around possibilities, around the need for feedback, around leadership, where are you trying to go now on your journey, and how do you anticipate utilizing these very tools that you are acknowledging are so essential when it comes to growth?
So for me, and I've talked about this for years. I've been speaking for, gosh, over 2 decades. I suddenly feel old, but I've been speaking for over 2 decades, sharing my story, and it to me, it's come naturally. I've always had people say like, you should do more, you should write a book, where's your podcast, where's all these things. And I think I've finally gotten into the headspace where I am actually ready to step into what that looks like.
Mm.
So taking the past experiences of doing all these speeches, great, how can I make it better? So now hiring a speaking coach, putting in place, getting into networks where I can learn from people who have been in the business for a lot longer, and what are some of the things that I can pull from them to help me in my career. And then also too, people have talked to me, gosh, literally for 2 decades, like, where's your book? I think it's long overdue at this point. So for me, the possibility of becoming a best-selling author is on the horizon and something that I'm aiming for. And so what I'm doing now is just putting those little things in place that will help me get that much closer to making that a reality. I think in the past years, I've always been like, well, I don't know where to start. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to do here. So for me, it's like taking a step back and say, like, okay, we want to write a book. Let's find out what it takes. And it's not to say I have to do all those things right this very second. It's really saying like, let's connect with some people. Let's get some people who've written books into my orbit. Start getting curious, right? I talk about being curious about what lies ahead and what that possibility could be, and asking those questions to then develop what that path could look like for me.
Hmm.
And I've always taken the approach, my path is going to be very different than your path or anybody else's path.
Yeah.
But there is an opportunity to have people along your path that will help guide you along the way. So, meaning like, I'm looking up to people who have done speeches for a long time and pulling those nuggets that have worked well for them, whether it's them getting a speaking coach, which is, I heard from somebody, so I did that. So I went ahead and got one.
Yeah.
Or someone who's written a book, they're like, oh, just do an ebook first and then you can work on something bigger. So just taking like little steps along the way. And I'm also realizing too, it's kind of like my journey to becoming an Olympian, right?
Hmm.
Like I had this goal of becoming an Olympian, and when I first attempted to have that happen in my life, I didn't make it.
Yeah.
And it's because I literally was like, I just want to be an Olympian. I had no idea what that looked like. And the second time that I tried out, I was a little bit more intentional with what I did. I pulled in
Mm.
those people who needed to be in my orb to help me get through this journey of becoming an Olympian. It wasn't just a goal, it was a journey to getting that goal. So I'm just kind of approaching this next phase in my life. I'm ready for it. I think it's going to grow me into what I've always wanted to be. And like I said, I hope that, maybe next time I come on your podcast, I can say I'm a best-selling author.
There you go. There you go.
Because I've been talking about this book for 20 years. I already have the title and everything. So it's really just kind of taking action and moving forward, and celebrating the smallest of wins,
Yep.
right? I think it's such a lofty goal when you think about it on its own, but when you
Mm.
start to add little steps along the way, it seems to become more achievable and attainable.
Yeah, there's a word you use in there. You actually used a really cool abbreviation of it, but orbit. You say, I think you said orb.
Yeah,
I was just
sorry.
like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for a British guy. It just doesn't. I could try that all day, and I would be told by my 6-year-old daughter, stop that now. But this notion of an orbit, I think what it shows is that there's a central energy, right? There's this thing in the center of it that says, okay, this is this is the energy that we're all providing into, and it's not as selfish as people maybe think sometimes. It's like, I'm going to put myself at the center of my orbit and make things happen for myself. But what you're saying here is that, and I love that you went back to that experience of the first go around with the Olympics. It's like, when we make it all about just simply hitting a destination or checking a box, we don't look at it as the creating of an orbit. We look at it as very linear. It's like, there's the end and there's the line, and I'm just going to walk towards the end. And it's like, well, it's never going to be that simple. And for you to understand that here you are with speaking career and book ideas, that these things have been out there, they've been in your mind, they've been shared externally as well, and yet the way in which you're going to make this happen, and that's what you pretty much just promised, declared, and committed to on my podcast, which I appreciate. That's accountability, Maritza, in my world. I love it.
You get the exclusive. I think that's the first time
That's
I've
it.
actually
There
said
we
that.
go.
So
It's
there you
public
go.
now. It's public information now. The fact of the matter is like, that orbit is essential. It is so important. I like to use the word community, but I love your word orbit. It's like this notion of a shared energy of folks around you with a central energy in that orbit. But then for you to also just simply acknowledge some of these steps that you were mentioning before with the possibility from this lens of possibility. It's like, there's so much you don't know about the speaking world. There's so much you don't know about writing a book. So what better way to get into that world and to start creating that orbit by simply asking those that are established, like, hey, what did you do? What's your idea? What's your opinion? And it's not about getting it right or wrong. Again, using that example before that you shared behind the blocks, but it's like, it's about just trying it one way and seeing how it works. And who knows, you may have the right speaking coach right now. That's awesome. You may have the wrong speaking coach initially, but hey, you've taken a step to learn what's it like just to simply have a coach in that space and what that's going to do for you in time.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And I would say too, the other way that I think about orbs too is, not only am I getting into the space of people that I want to learn from,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also trying to pull people into my orb that I want to influence, right? I
Mm.
think that's been my ultimate goal, is to continue to help people be better, right? I want to learn from others, but I also want to bring people in. So when
Yeah.
I think about my orb, it's like, consider me this like like this energy that's like sticking out in all different areas, and I'm like trying to pull in everybody. So it's
Mhm.
like up, down, sideways, left, right, like however you want to look at it. I think for me, my personal orb needs to include people who I'm looking up to, but also the people that I want to illuminate the lanes for, that want
Mhm.
to possibly do the journey that I have, or just want to be influenced by some of the tactics that I'm using, or some of the things that I'm saying, or whatever it may be. That's an ultimate goal for me too.
Yeah, yeah, I've no doubt. Even in just our conversation today, there's so many little nuggets that are going to serve you in this next chapter in terms of how you look at these things and how you move forwards. And I'm also just from almost from a personal side now too. There's this word curiosity that you've used a few times now. I bring it up on the podcast at least every couple episodes as well. It's one of my words. For you, I am curious as to how, when you're looking forwards now, like what does you utilizing that curiosity muscle look like? Like how do you exercise that muscle of curiosity on a day-to-day basis, especially when you start thinking about this world that you're heading into with all these new ideas for growth? Like how do you anticipate using that muscle of curiosity?
Yeah, great question. I think the curiosity muscle is going to be like the strongest muscle possible.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
For me, like I said, I've done a lot of speaking speeches and done speaking engagements, but I think it's really understanding what are the behind the scenes, right? Like it's not just me going up there on the stage and sharing my story. It's like how do I then follow through to understand the business side of it, to get that network for the next speaking engagement, to
Yeah.
connect even more with my audience. So I think the curiosity is really starting to paint that picture of what does my speaking career look like, and asking 800 million questions,
Mm-hmm.
and also taking a moment to pull in what I'm learning from other people and assessing. I've always said this, right? When I give my talks, I'm always like, it's great to look up to athletes, but you don't want to be the next insert name.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be the next you,
Yeah.
right? The best version of you. So my curiosity is going to say, like, okay, well, my speaking coach is John Edwards, and I've heard him speak a million times, and I'm like obsessed. He's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So I sit there and I listen to him, and I'm like, I could do something like that. And then I kind of convert it into something that I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? How does what he does show up for me in my next speech? And I'm not repeating his speech. I'm just taking something that could work well. So
Yeah.
I think that's where the curiosity muscle is going to be, is really kind of taking, I love sitting back and watching and learning, and then spitting back out what that actually looks like for me. And I'm not trying to copy people. I'm just trying to use those nuggets and elements that can help me move forward.
Yeah, well, there I was just like hypothetically talking about speaker coach, but then you're pulling in like a Hall of Fame speaker. So I'm like, all right, you should be all right. You should be good. You're in good hands. You're in good hands. And so and hey, I would expect nothing less from you, Maritza, either. It's just like, hey, if I'm going to work with someone, I'll work with the best. I'm going to work with
Oh,
the
he's
best.
awesome.
So I love hearing that. But I think for me, like, and what one of my favorite things I've been able to do by having people come back on from the previous iteration of the show is that so much of what we spoke to last time, as I've already said, it was more of a backtrack and then bringing it into the present. But I'm hearing your growth in the last 3 years, just from the way in which you're showing up and speaking in this guy. Even something as simple as identifying as the speaker you're becoming versus assuming that the speaker you were 3 years ago was like the finished product, like that you are speaking into existence the version of your next self, which I love hearing. And I think that's such a wonderful example to our audience, is that even if you do the work to identify as fill in the blank, and that's enough work sometimes. And like, it took me about a year and a half to actually remember I wrote a book, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm an author too, by the way. Like, it would always just kind of come up in conversation, and my wife would like elbow me and be like, yo, remember that book you wrote? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm an author too. But like these things take time to even just get comfortable seeing yourself as this, before then seeing yourself as no, this is an evolution, this is a version of myself that I am today, but I see this next chapter, I see this next opportunity now for growth. And I'm curious, do you feel that too? Like, I hear it in how you speak, so I'm just curious how much you feel that too.
I do. I think
Yeah.
now more than ever, I'm ready for it. I
Hmm.
think in the past I've thought about it, but now I'm actually committed to it. I think I
Yeah.
discovered a lot more about myself over the last couple of years that now I'm ready to commit to being the speaker that I want to be and
Hmm.
the author that I want to be and the mom that I want to be, the wife, like all I can insert
Keep
this
going. Yeah.
into all areas of my life.
Hmm.
And then now I'm ready to just ignite. Like this is the time to do it. And I'm not naive to say that it's going to be this perfect journey,
Hmm.
right? Like I said, I'm going to bring in the people who are going to help me along this journey, especially when in the toughest of moments I'm going to have to pivot and do something different, right?
Hmm.
That was unexpected. And I
Yeah.
don't think I have the entire journey laid out by any means, but I know where I want to go. And I think that's the key is like I see it. I
Hmm.
see the possibility. I know I can get there. Now let's just get moving so we can get closer to that there, whatever that there is.
Well, like an elite speaker, you brought it right around to where we started, and I just want to acknowledge that. And it's just that ability to say, "Hey, you know what? Like I see the possibility, I see the end result, but there's this orbit, this orb. I'm gonna try it out tonight on my daughter.
You can start
I'm gonna see
practicing
how it
that.
meet, see how it hits with her. I think she's definitely gonna run away from me. But no, I think this whole idea of knowing the possibilities, seeing the destination, creating that orbit, and getting so much more comfortable with the feedback around you as well. Like it all makes sense. It's all an environment that we can create for ourselves, not only to experience growth, but then to do that work around the readiness of like, hey, I see the unknown, but I'm ready for the unknown. And so, Maritza, yet again, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I'm so appreciative and thankful for the time. But before I let you go, where can we learn more about Maritza in case, hey, maybe I'm looking for a speaker, So where can we learn more about you?
I love that. Thanks,
Mm,
Steve. Thanks for always bringing me on board. Like I love coming onto your podcast. It's always a great conversation.
mm,
Looking forward to the next one.
mhm.
But if people want to learn a little bit more about me, they can head to my website, MaritzaMcClendon.com. I'm also on social media on Instagram as Ritzy Swims, and I'm very real. So I share my family life as well as my professional life on my Instagram. So,
Mhm.
and of course, follow me on LinkedIn as well. Happy to connect and see if there's an opportunity for me to connect you with somebody else.
Yep.
I'm here for you. But if you are looking for a speaker, that's just to
You
reach out to me
know
there.
where she is. You know where
Yeah.
she is. Honestly, this was great. I'm so thankful to have this opportunity again to have you on, and just best of luck with everything moving forwards. All right, take care.
Thanks, you too.
And my thanks again to Maritza for joining us on the show. That was so fun to catch up with her. To have a repeat guest, returning guest on the show is always so fun, especially when they come from the career competitor format now into this growth ready format. It allows me just to really highlight how our guests themselves have grown from one episode, from one discussion to the next. And to hear Maritza working through some processes herself currently on her own growth journey makes it such a more worthwhile experience for you as a listener to be able to just simply relate to her, to know that, hey, this stuff never ends. Even the people that seem to have it most figured out and they're established and they're achieved and they're seen through this specific lens of quote unquote success, they're working on themselves. They're going through this growth journey the same way anyone else is as well. A specific takeaway, though, I really want you all to think about here is just to start assessing the way in which people are supporting you. As Maritza spoke to this idea of feedback, I really want to stress the importance that you need to put a higher premium on those that are giving you feedback, those that are supporting you when it comes to your growth. At a certain point, if everyone in your life is a critic, there's no world where you can ever see your potential value. You have to find those who want to discuss what's going great as much as they want to discuss what can be better. Don't get me wrong, we high performers love to run towards the what can be better. That is why it is so important that we have folks that want to say, well, before we get there, what is going well? What is going great? And how, by leading with that, can we maybe open our minds up to other areas that we could be doing better, as opposed to assuming that there's this area that we need to improve that we've already figured out, or that we just run towards because it's the most obvious area for improvement. So take that time, do that work to just simply look around. Who am I letting in? Who's giving me feedback? Who's part of my support system? And are they serving my growth? Are they considering what's going well as much as they're considering how can things be better? My thanks again to Maritza for joining us. My thanks to you, as always, for being a committed listener, committed follower of Growth Ready. If this is your first time, I appreciate you. I hope you love the experience as much as I did. But don't let this be the last time you check in. Make sure you're subscribed to the show so you can continue to learn from incredible assets like Maritza, who are out there willing to provide such valuable insight so that we can all continue to assess our own growth journey and find ways to ready ourselves to make that growth journey even more successful. Best of luck with anything and everything you've got going on in your world, and I look forward to doing this again with you very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to Growth Ready. If you liked what you heard and are feeling ready to grow, be sure to leave a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share the episode with someone you know is ready to fuel their growth journey today. We love our community, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at podcast@growthready.com. And until next time, we are Growth Ready, and you will be too.